Didn't do the announcement. It seems to be recording. There, it's recording.
I saw the announcement when I logged
I,
on.
I think it was probably because of April's note taker. All right, well then. Um, you're on camera whether you want to be or not. So welcome to the February 24th coordination circle for the Lifeboat Academy. And as is our custom, we start by doing a land acknowledgement, and I will always make it available to anybody who would like to practice doing land acknowledgements in a safe and friendly environment. And so is there anybody who would like to do a land acknowledgement today? Okay. Um, so, um, and I will say in the community justice program today, we had a brave volunteer who did a land acknowledgement, and it was lovely. So it can be done. And as always, I channel Norm Leach, and we start by acknowledging the land because the land was here before we were, and the land will continue long after we are gone. And we are only here as people because the land saw fit to rise us up. And so we start our meetings with this acknowledgement to put things in right perspective. And as a reminder that everything that we do is interconnected and that we are part of a larger living entity, that we are intimately connected with the trees and the animals and the water and the weather and the rocks. And literally, they become part of our body for a time, and then they return to the land again. And in acknowledging this, we are dipping into ancient wisdom that comes through many different lineages of indigenous people who were with the land and part of the land. And this is, in fact, I think, the core of what it means to be indigenous is to see your connection with the land and to see the land as a living entity. So we owe a deep debt of gratitude to our many indigenous ancestors and neighbors and relations. And with that acknowledgement comes an obligation of care, both for the land itself and for the people of the land, and in particular, to strive to heal wounds that may have happened. Well, wounds that we know happened. This is not a hypothetical. Lots of wounds are still raw in the world today because we have not made the right choices to be in right relations with both our human and our more than human relatives. So we start by acknowledging the land as a sort of a call to action, a reminder for us to do what we can, where we can, when we can, to make things right to the extent possible. And with that, oh, and I think, obviously, just to make the point complete, one of those relationships is with indigenous communities from settler people like ourselves to figure out how we can heal the wounds and learn the deep lessons that are being offered to us. So with that, I acknowledge the many indigenous cultures of the world who are all striving right now to heal internally their own wounds, to protect and preserve their culture, and to do it in a way that is for the benefit of all of us. And so may we support their struggles and join in where we are able to. And with that, just take a moment to ground yourself where you are. Literally bring yourself into the landscape. So I invite you to take a moment, take a deep breath, feel the weight of your body pressing into the seat where you are. Take a moment just to become aware of your breath, which is always with you, whether you're noticing it or not. This constant process of interacting with the landscape, this process of reciprocity. energy coming in, carbon dioxide going out, which feeds our green relatives. And see in your mind's eye where you are on the landscape. See yourself in the room where you are, in the room, in the building on the land. And take a moment just to note your neighbors to the north and your neighbors to the east and to the south and to the west. And then take one more energizing breath in, and on the exhale, just let go to the extent you are able of anything that keeps you from being present with us today. All righty. So we have an opportunity for a little check-in. Does anyone want to offer up a check-in question today? All right. So how about actually let's go with the weather one. How's the weather with you? How's the weather where you are, metaphorically or realistically, whichever you choose to answer? And I want to change up the way we do circle just a little bit rather than imposing the circle from my view. I'm going to let somebody volunteer to go first, and then you can just pick the next person, and we'll record that, and then we'll keep that as the order when we do circle throughout the day. So is there anybody who would like to start with a check-in? Yeah,
I
over to you.
start with my own personal question. I don't think I've been in a coordination circle before as such. And so I'm not sure if I should be here for two reasons. One, I'm not sure what I can contribute. For another, I've got this back-to-back thing happening. And if this isn't the best place for me to be, then I'll go off and do the other thing that I've got to do. But happy to find out more about the circle. If oh, I will have to leave at 5:30 if I do stay, if that's okay with other
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and do you want me
I'll
to?
answer the question and then I'll hand it back to you.
Okay.
It's perfectly fine to leave when you need to and to come when you are able to. So we appreciate you taking the time to be here. The coordination circle is open to everyone. You always have something to contribute because your perspective helps us see the elephant more completely. And it's not required. It is a requirement of the caretakers to represent the circles so that we know that the circles are all included. But basically, the agenda is we check in, we remind ourselves of our North Star, the high level why we're doing this. And then we do a quick update on what each of the guilds is working on. And then we handle any questions that need for coordination between the guilds. So it's a particularly good place to be to get a sense of how everything fits together. So from that perspective, you're more than welcome. Hopefully it feels like it's worth your time. And if it doesn't feel like it's worth your time, no harm, no foul. You're free to go and we won't take it personally. So with that, back over to you for a check-in
Okay.
on how is the weather with you today?
The weather. Well, um, there's some minor turbulence, but it's not white water. Um, and other than that, it's mild enough and spacious enough. And thank you very much for the clarification. I appreciate actually getting a better sense of how everything fits together. So I'm happy to stick around for, until my comfort zone gets kind of wiggly. And I will pass it to the next person down from me going counterclockwise, and that is Ronnie.
Thanks, Pam. Well, the sun just set here, and I feel like my inner sun is setting because I am tired. I worked today, so it was a long day, but I'm happy to be here, and the sky looks pretty. So that's nice. And I will pass to Roland.
The weather has been changeable here, and it's interesting just to feel into that. So over to April.
Thank you. I guess the weather's been changeable with me too, and I'm still suffering from a cold or whatever it is, some viral activity. So my brain power and my energy comes and goes. So we'll hope we're on the upward swing right at this minute. We've had heavy downpours lately, and I have felt a little downpoured on because I'm working to a deadline for a grant writing opportunity that if it comes, if we actually get the funding, it would be quite an interesting and timely project. The other thing that has to do with weather, climate, and Earth activities, I guess, is to announce that on Friday, while I was in the middle of a Zoom call, an earthquake happened. And I'm 35 miles from the epicenter of it, but it was like a huge explosion going on. The earth moved. There was cataclysmic sounds. It also sounded like a tornado had just blown in. And everybody I know ran outside onto the street, and we all stood there and looked at each other and didn't know what to do beyond that. So much for ducking, tucking, and rolling, and whatever we're supposed to be doing. Anyway, that's me. Who's left on our list? Oh, I think it's B for Ben.
Yep, that would be me. Yeah, changeable is definitely that's the watchword for me, and the real weather and my inner weather. This weekend it felt like, well, and it's the same. It's felt like a couple storms have passed through, and it's windy and dark and rainy, and then you look again and it's sunny, and that's somewhat disorienting and also kind of reassuring in a way. It's like, yeah, this too shall pass, and weather it. And what I am hearing is I think all of us are a little on the low energy and distractible side, and so I recommend we definitely lean into that, leading with kindness and gentleness with each other today, and let's see what we can get through, and be happy and content with that. So with that in mind, I'm going to share our agenda, and especially for Pam's benefit, but also as a reminder to all of us, basically we have some things that we had on our to-do list from the last meeting, including getting the newsletter up, which has been sent. Some details for getting the onboarding, which is happening this Wednesday and Friday, prepared, and that is in process. I prepared a new Medium post that was part of the newsletter. And the one task that we didn't really get to is, or that it's my task, I didn't do it, is to encourage more updates on the Miro board, and related to the onboarding. Although there has been activity on the Miro board, people have been going in and adding some stuff. So we'll also go down, we've done our grounding and check-in, and so we'll take a little time to revisit our North Star, and then we'll take that down and look at our seasonal plan now that we have, all of the circles have plans. So we'll review that, take a quick look at our calendar, and then we'll go through guild reports. And from the guild reports, we'll gather any topics that we need to discuss as a coordination circle. So with that in mind, let's start with our North Star. And we do this in a number of different ways. And I think to keep it conventional, let's go with our tried and true. Sometimes we change it up, but we go through the circle and everyone has an opportunity. We go through the circle twice, The first round, everyone has a chance to answer any one or all three of these questions, whatever feels right for you. Why are we here today? Why are we involved in the Lifeboat Academy? What are we trying to accomplish together? Why is that important? And where are we now? And then once we have a chance to share, we go once through to integrate what we're hearing, your response round around what you're hearing other people say. So Pam, oh, and you can always pass and we'll come back to you if you're not prepared at the time we come to you in the circle. So, and there are no wrong answers to this. This is not a quiz. This is an opportunity for us each to check in with why we're here, our purpose, and how it connects to the Lifeboat Academy. So what are we trying to accomplish? Why is that important? And where are we now? Any one or all three? Pam, over to you.
I like the generous parameters. It makes it my sense of unpreparedness um, a place to move through. So I guess specifically, as far as it's not exactly accomplished, but I'm here to learn and fill in more of the picture of what the Lifeboat Academy is, connecting these different spaces that I've been in. And so it seems like that's one of the things that this guild does. So that's cool. And why is it important? Well, it always helps to know what you're involved in. And especially for me, as I try to communicate out, the more I know, the better communicator I can be. And where am we now with regard to this? Kindergarten. You know, for as long as I've been hanging around, I feel pretty new in my understanding of the possibilities, the potential for the space and spheres in my life. And then that's Ronnie.
In this moment, I feel like we're trying to do two things. One is to grow our international network of lifeboat builders, and the other is to purchase the land on Spalding Road to officially establish the, I guess it's kind of all, it is already established, but to secure tenure for the main campus of the Lifeboat Academy. And these are important because more than ever, people need to change and adapt to what's happening. And we all need support in order to do that. And having tenure on the land means being able to invest deeper effort and commitment and time and money into being in relationship with the land and protecting the land as the source of life. And where are we now? We are in the beginning of a new year with a new-ish cohort of lifeboat builders, figuring out what support people need and what we're going to be offering, and also in the process of finalizing the legal structure for the co-op. And it's actually, is it actually kind of two legal structures? Or we don't know. We don't know. We're in the process. figuring out legal structures. Okay, great. I will pass to Roland.
So what are we trying to accomplish? So I'm just gonna babble, and I have full faith that Ben will be able to plug the things in where they're supposed to go. Um, um, there's a fractal thing that's coming up for me about what does it mean to fill in the picture of what the Lifeboat Academy is for someone who has spent a lot of time with it, um, versus someone who is being introduced to it. And it makes me think of beginner mind and maintaining that sense of wonder and openness. Yeah, and because I think there's, and I really enjoyed listening to you know, growing our international network of lifeboat builders and trying to secure tenure and all of these really sort of practical things, which means that I don't have to talk about anything practical, which is awesome. But at the same time, I think a deeply practical thing is to uh, learn the learn to unlearn to relearn, so that we relearn how to work with the how instead of the what. And I feel like the processes that we have in place for the Lifeboat Academy as sort of a shared learning endeavor, um, lends itself really well to shifting the way that we understand how to do things. Uh, yeah, yeah. So that's all I wanted to add. So over to April.
I was waiting for you to get really metaphysical, Roland, but oh well.
I can take up the challenge. Just give me a chance.
I was gonna say there's still time.
um, uh, Today I'm thinking that what we're trying to accomplish is how to figure out to be living well, and healthily and harmlessly in community, and that we are trying to grow that in each of us, but also spreading out interpersonally and also across geographies. Um, and there's something about that that's the feeling that we're growing into outside space somehow. Something really important for me in that. Um, and it's important because this is lifeblood. I believe this is what makes healthy humans, I'm convinced. And I think where we are now is in a considerably different place than we were 4 years ago, perhaps, with that time span being filled with messy, organic growth. And that we're seeing that and feeling that each time that we meet, but then overall in a different time scale as well. Over to Ben.
Um, I'm going to start with a why this is important because I'm very aware of the growing dis-ease of more and more people in the world as things that we've seen coming on the horizon are arriving. And so I'm thinking about, I think what we're trying to accomplish is akin to Meg Wheatley's Islands of Sanity. Um, and I think the healing is about how do we reclaim sanity. I don't think we can maintain sanity because I think we're coming from crazy as a culture. And the fundamental crazy is delusion, denial. We've lived with this illusion that humans are so special and so different that that we don't even recognize that here we are on a living planet. So yeah, this feels like it's about reclaiming sanity in the face of growing insanity. And where are we now? Roland and I have been talking a lot lately about process, and one of our shared mantras has been, I am what I am becoming. And I think that is part of the transformation from business as usual world to the world that I think comes next, is the focus on the process of becoming and letting go of it's more important to ask the question than the answers we come up with. It's nice to have answers, but it's really about that process of asking the right questions and asking those questions to each other. Because I think it's how we weave together part of what makes healthy humans is we are healthy humans together. So weaving together some sense of collective sanity. Yeah, I think I think where we are is, I feel where I am is really anchoring myself into the process of becoming and being more and more agnostic about where that goes. So we've all had a chance to share, and now we do a response round. So what is coming up for you in light of other people's comments? What are you noticing? What's standing out for you? Pam, over to you again.
I really appreciate the philosophical layer that's sandwiching this whole thing above and below, and um, yeah, just the complete agreement with the pregnancy of this moment, both what's dying and what's possibly being born, and the possibility for this space to be a really good gestation chamber for all those energies. I'm just going to leave it at that. Is it Roland? Are you next? Ironic? It's an R person.
Yeah, thank you. I love how through the process we use these wisdom tidbits that arise get woven into people's practice and day to day. I am what I am becoming is a translation of the name for God, the Hebrew name for God that I learned from a really awesome queer rabbi who anyway, they were kicked out of Orthodox Judaism for being queer and had their own collapse and their own transformation. And so that wisdom is I love how alive that is and how um and this is what I think being in community is about. This is the root of it, is storytelling and our the incredible knowledge and wisdom that each of us carries, and we share it with each other, and it just continues to proliferate and impact us. And that's part of, to me, that's a big part of what the Lifeboat Academy is about, and that's what living in a more indigenous kind of way is about. Um, letting life live through us, and so yeah, I just feel really grateful for the naming of that, and um, yeah, and I was in another totally different community space this weekend, and the the teacher was bringing up Octavia Butler and God is Change, and I was just like, ah. So anyway, good stuff. I'll pass to Roland.
Well, the question for this round in itself is interesting. What are the things that we're noticing, the interweavings, and I think that there is overall there's an understanding that uh, living life is is this right? Can I say this? A multivalent experience, and that there is no separation between the practical, so-called practical, and the philosophical, that the underpinnings of everything that we do is um, is really important, and that that sense of um, the big view, that sort of right brain whole understanding of the connections. Um, I'm I have the conviction that it's something that uh, has been uh, quietened, and that we're bringing forward. And I see it in moments like this when we're sharing the different things that are important or that we're noticing, or etc. And it's one of and I also think it's one of the reasons why it becomes challenging to talk about the Lifeboat Academy, because it doesn't have that left brain category, you're doing this and this and this and this, but it's rather this whole experience, or just living, the feeling of living, the art of living. Over to April.
Thank you. I got stuck on the word multivalent and started to think about multivitamins. So sorry, I'm a little distracted. Though I think I am multivalent most often. I'm definitely the big picture woman. And there's not that very many people that can map, I guess, see the map and then connect the dots. So it's a delight to me that that's one of the things that we do. And the learning for me is explosive and deep in doing that. But I just want to say what I'm noticing is that, yeah, there are practical markers that we have here that help us to know that there's progress being made. And there's also the whole sort of confusing web of working stuff out internally and then interpersonally amongst those that we care about. And also that we're being offered the conditions for growth. And I think it was Ronnie that said, transformation as well, and that we are grounded in that. So it's not just like a little something that is wiggling out there and we can't identify that we actually get to examine that. And the chances to do that in this life, I think, are pretty rare. So appreciating that. And over to Ben.
Yeah, I think I just have a big ditto. And the both and of it, practical and philosophical. I was thinking about philosophical because it's the Heart Work and Philosophy Guild, and so every once in a while I come back to the philosophy part. And philosophy is the love of wisdom. And I started thinking about, well, what are wise choices? And wise choices are practical choices. You know, they are everyday living choices that lead to better living and don't lead to nasty consequences. And so, yeah, I feel like the the both and of it's practical and philosophical, because those are two sides of the same coin. And um and there's progress and it's messy, you know, and it's powerful and it's hard to describe. It's all that both and. This is my favorite part of the coordination circle. And so now we move into slightly more, we go from big picture and we start to come down to the practical, and reorient ourselves. So now let's look at our seasonal plan, our annual plan. We have kind of a nice little, almost one item per guild at this point, with fuzzy boundaries. So Heart Work is looking at gleaning lessons from Connect the Dots on the way to planning a retreat. The Curiosity Guild is focused on the badge project at the moment and on the way to or connected with the larger research project. Finance is continuing to look at the bylaws, which we recognize as our legal foundation and important for all sorts of practical reasons. The farm is right now thinking about the gardens because that's the time of year. And it's also thinking about the pharmastery and inviting more people to come experience the pharmastery. And outreach is thinking about how to capture takeaways. Practically, how do we do that? What's that all about? And there are then again some knock-ons as we think about how to do that. There are some little experiments for doing that. And then when we look at basically this is our annual plan, the longer list of things that we are engaged in. So just a quick round about any sort of questions or observations around the seasonal plan. It's still fresh, so hopefully it's making sense. Over to you, Pam.
Other than just being really interested in learning more about what's behind each of those very succinct sentences. And I feel a kind of tension because I kind of wish I had more time to just really dive into this stuff more completely, because there's a lot of exciting possibilities hidden in all of these places. So even the one guild that I didn't join, which was the farm, because I felt I'm not going to be there to do whatever, etc. You talk about gardens and the plan. I'm thinking, oh shit, that's something I need to know about. How do you guys do that? I'm going to leave it at that. Ronnie.
No questions from me. Over to Roland.
No, I'm good. Just a question in terms of format. Will there be updates from the guilds, or yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's next.
Over to April.
Nothing for me. I'm fine. Over to Ben.
I think that's good for me. And oh, I just realized I need to bring up our calendar. I don't know how I closed it. There we go. Okay, so next we're going to take a look at our calendar just so we have a sense of what some of the key activities this week and next week are. So that's next week. So this week in terms, oh, I can't. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I was having mouse problems. So tomorrow afternoon, Ronnie and I are going to be meeting to go over the lifeboat onboarding. We've got a schedule for Wednesday morning at 7 Pacific and Friday afternoon at 2, where we will be orienting the new cohort members. Primarily, this is the kind of technical, how we use Asana, how the guilds are set up, and questions about the sort of basic processes that we are using. We are also hosting the Pharmastery is hosting the Community Justice Program Advanced Circle Training with Evelyn Zellerer on Thursday and Friday. We are just the hosts for that. I'm going to be doing a welcome and a closing, but other than that, it's Evelyn takes care of the work and Roland takes care of all of the catering. And then we gather up people going, oh my God, the food is so amazing. And we also on Thursday have the Heartwork and Philosophy Guild in the afternoon at 2, and then the Farm Food and Housing Guild at 5. And then that's it for this week. And then next week, we have a meeting with the lawyers. The Finance and Legal Circle has a meeting with the lawyers on Monday morning. We are hosting another training event here on trauma-informed practice and marginalized and Indigenous community awareness combined. And that'll be on site. And then there's also the outreach meeting on next Tuesday. And the podcast will probably not happen with Andy. That's kind of been, ignore that. And likewise, I don't think we haven't talked about whether finance will meet again since we're meeting on Monday. But basically there will be a guild meeting for each of the guilds, and there will be the onboarding, and we will be hosting a couple trainings here. So any questions about the schedule? Anything missing from the schedule? All right, any questions? Just raise your hand. I don't think we need to go through unless there's a question. Roland? And
I'm
then
just
Karen.
a little unclear as to some of these are on site. Some of these are part of internal processes that are just being carried through, like with the financial and the lawyers, etc. I'm just wondering which are the ones that are open to folks like myself.
The ones that are on site are the CJ training this Thursday, Friday, and the trauma-informed training next Tuesday. Those are on site and there's no online component. All of the guild meetings are all available, and they're all online, and they're all open to attending. And both of the lifeboat onboarding sessions are available. And Pam, this is very similar to the guild onboarding that we did last year around this time after the charrette. So it'll be very similar to what we covered, but you're more than welcome to come again. And then Roland, you had a question?
Yeah, so 2 questions. At the onboarding sessions, we'll also be talking about scheduling to check to see for people in the guilds if the times work or if the times need to change. Is that right?
that was the plan, and I think that's actually something to add to the agenda.
Okay,
Because right now we don't have not everyone is signing up for the onboarding. We were thinking if everyone was there in the room, it's a lot easier just to ask people and to write it down. Since we have them in the room, but now I don't know how many people will actually be showing up in the room. So
okay,
let's put that on the agenda.
okay.
Any other questions?
Yes, I had two questions. My second question is, am I catering for the Tuesday trauma informed workshop?
Oh,
Okay,
yes,
if you could find out, is it?
you are,
I am. Okay,
or
good,
you
good.
and I are, and I may be. Anyhow, yes, we need to work that part out.
Yeah, okay, good.
Mhm.
That's all.
All
Thanks.
right. All right, cool. Any other questions or comments? Okay, then
I have one question, which is about the onboarding on Friday, which I think I'm part of, but I can't remember who else is part of it as well.
I think you, me, and Ronnie are,
Right, okay, good.
and
Just
I will probably have to duck out. So I can be there for part of it, but I don't think I'll be there for the end of it. Just because of the other training that's happening here on site.
okay, great. Thank you.
All right, so we've looked at our plan, we've looked at our calendar, and now it's off to guilds. So guild reports. First up, heart work and philosophy. What are the highlights? Recent activity and action items, next steps.
So we have had discussions around the lessons learned from not only the connect the dots, but also the agreement circles. And we are continuing to have those conversations. At the next meeting, the discussion will be more around going over the tools that we've identified and the processes that we've identified to evaluate what helps and what doesn't. Yeah, and we have lovely new people who have been attending the guild meetings. So just more onboarding, and depending on how things go with the actual onboarding sessions, maybe working out new meeting times if needed. So anything that either of my other any of the other Heartwork Guild meeting attendees would like to add.
I think that covers it nicely. I don't have anything to add. Thinking, all right, any questions? Any questions from those who weren't at the meeting?
Oh, I have one thing to add. One of the things that we talked about was also about Heartwork is the keeper of the agreements. And one of the things that we've been discussing is how to share that with the other guilds, that the agreements that are ostensibly at the base of how we work together at the in the Lifeboat Academy. So more to come on that. And now I'm done, I think. Pretty sure.
All right, next up. Research and learning. Okay, this is, I have to do a mea culpa. I am, the next step. So recent activity is I sent an invitation to, not to guild members per se, but to potential project partners around something that I've been proposing for a while, which is a kind of a broader consortium of other networks who are all working on a similar, what comes next, and talking about how do we create a mutual support network around that is not more work, but that is actually helping us each do what we're doing better. And primarily it's about how do we keep the lines of communication flowing so that we know when to reach out to different partners where there might be resources available. So that invitation has been sent and the response was quite positive. And in next steps, one is following up on the invitation, and the other thing is actually scheduling a research and learning meeting. And I put that off because I have just been, one is I'm scheduling challenge. That's one of my trauma spots. And, but that needs to happen. So I am committing to that invitation going out by the next coordination meeting. Any questions?
I don't have a question, but I do have to go. And I'm glad I dropped in. This was really good for me to follow through with, and see you down the road. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. All right, moving on next to finance and legal. This is also, we skipped our last meeting because people had conflict. There were both conflicts around scheduling and we had the lawyers meeting coming up. So I compiled the notes from our previous meeting, incorporated them into the bylaw, and also refined one of the ideas that we have is convening what we're calling a lawyers conclave. And because we're hoping to get second opinions on the structure. So those have been updated and circulated. And then the next step is we'll be meeting with the lawyers on March 3rd. So Roland, do you have anything that you want to add to that?
No, I think that's that was good, and we're yeah. It is kind of an experiment because there is a lot of removing things to try to get to something. So we'll get there. We're getting there. We are getting there, actually. And I think that's why the lawyers conclave is an interesting idea, because we're trying to, well, to use the language that we were using before, we're trying to put in place a right-brained kind of structure in a very left-brain legal system. Yeah, so we need as all the innovation we can get. So I just adding that back to you, Lynn.
Yeah, what you said. Any questions or comments? Okay, dokie. And next up, farm, food and housing. Over to you, Roland.
Well, and for all of you who've been following along, the Farm Food and Housing Guild doesn't meet very often, or hasn't met very often, but we have 2 new guild members who have joined and not on site, which is really interesting and fantastic. So part of the meeting was talking about well, we talked about that, and projects that people had, and how the Farm Food and Housing Guild can help support that. And also, we talked about reciprocity, and that part of the reciprocity is helping the Food Farm and Housing Guild um, as a way of having hands-on practice for processes and etc. Uh, so we started talking about actual projects, and one of them, a big one, is the pharmastery. So started to talk about how to outline what the pharmastery experiment is. One of the new guild members, Heather, has volunteered to be a guinea pig, and Heather is local but not on Pender, so would has an ability to come and visit and spend time, but not full time. We talked about, and this is, I think, probably more between Ben and myself, improving our responses to woofers. And something that we also talked about as a group is how to improve our baseline and tracking systems. And then so setting up experiments to increase biodiversity and biocapacity, refining the Lifeboat Academy planting chart monolithic information spreadsheet to make it more user-friendly, and then identifying short-term and long-term projects so that we can prioritize and place them in an order, so that we can, knowing what we can do now and setting us up for longer term projects when we can do that. And one of the projects that comes from one of the new guild members is tracking watershed activity and understanding how they work, because they are in a different part of the continent than we are, and what's the difference in water and how to use it, and that's all potentially useful information. And that's it from the Farm Food and Housing Guild. And I know I kept moving the words in the name around, but generally that's what it is. Are there anything that you want to add, Ben, or are there any questions or comments from anyone?
I have nothing to add, and I don't see any comments, so I think we're good to move on. And that leaves outreach. Over to you, Ronnie.
So I wasn't at the last meeting, but I read the notes and watched parts of the video. And the discussion was around social media. What is our ideal intentions for using social media? How are we currently using social media? Kind of what's the broader landscape that people are navigating now with social media, and kind of how can we bridge the gap between how people kind of receive information about us on social media and the actual experience of the Lifeboat Academy. So that kind of segues into the testimonial capturing that we are embarking on, and how we can reach the people who are the most likely to get involved, um, and be open to the experiences that we're offering. Um, so next steps are to continue the discussion, specifically in terms of how it relates to capturing takeaways and how we're sharing things out, as well as the ongoing discussion around how we are leaving Instagram and Facebook and kind of that whole process. Um, and also, somebody from Pamela's committee, I believe, is going to be reviewing our website to give kind of a outside perspective of someone who's kind of interested in the kind of things we're talking about, to give some feedback about how the website communicates what we're doing. So that's really, really awesome. Anything else anyone wants to add?
I want to add two things. One was that Pamela was there and reflecting on Roland's beginner mind comment of and I continue, this is one of my favorite things about Circle is oftentimes, you know, people are showing up for the first time and they say, oh, I don't know, I don't really have anything to, I'm still figuring things out. And then their contributions are always really meaty and useful and informative. And so Pam had a whole bunch of, you know, really interesting observations and insights that felt really useful. And one of them was actually, I think what Pam was describing brought home the three circles model that Social Roots uses, where being really intentional about there is the organizing group, you know, the ones who do the heavy lifting. There is a group of committed volunteers around them, you know, not quite as deeply ingrained, but still active. And then there's this whole sea of people around them who are kind of lurking and waiting, sort of, you know, monitoring the situation and thinking about when to bite, you know. And that suddenly, I feel like part of our communication challenge has been we've been trying to talk to very different groups using the same everything. And just being able to say, here's how we talk to, and the three circles I talk about, the 1%, 9%, and 90%. And how we communicate with the 90% is just going to be different than how we communicate to the 9%. And it seems so obvious, but that kind of like the penny kind of fell, you know, whatever that expression is, the penny fell in place. I was like, oh, right, that makes sense that, you know, we have a different strategy for, and I think it's the strategy for the 90% is how we support lifeboat builders to reach out to their folk. And then there's how we support lifeboat builders. And those are two different communication strategies. Anyhow, I just thought that was interesting. So yeah, anyone else have any comments or questions? All right, well then we've done our guild reports. So now we are back to basically the items on the agenda. Let's do, I want to do once around, are there any things that you want to discuss in terms of coordination at this time, given that we've gone through the reviews? So I guess, Ronnie, it would be over to you. Any items to add to the agenda?
I don't think so. Not in this moment. Over to Roland.
I don't have anything to add. No. But maybe oh, what's that? I don't know what the expression in English is. In French, it's une puce à l'oreille, that I mentioned before about the Heartwork Guild wanting to think about approaching other guilds on how they're integrating the agreements. So that would also be something for the coordination circle to think about. So not to add to the agenda, but just as a thinking about kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So over to you, April.
I don't think I have anything else. I agree, Roland, about the need for the thinking about the agreements piece with other guilds. I think it's a lifeline to be able to do the kind of work that we're doing and to have stuff be produced, I guess. Over to Ben.
Yeah, I feel like that's, I'm just from a sociocracy lens, I think that that is too hard work to formulate as a proposal. And then that might need to come to coordination, but it could go directly to the other circles, like to the caretakers of the other circles. But if and when, I think when that proposal is ready, then it'll be clear whether that's a Coordination Circle
Right.
or independent. I have on the meeting times, the thing that is niggling at the back of my head is scheduling for agreement circles, navigation sessions, mentoring, etc. And I think, oh, and actually reminders about the lifeboat onboarding. We've had 2 RSVPs for Wednesday morning, and that's, to my knowledge, all we've had in terms of RSVPs. So I don't know whether other people are planning on attending or not attending. And we were hoping that we could do some, likewise, I don't think we've had fulsome updates on the Miro board. And at this point, I'm not even sure that's the best way to gather people's interest. So when I'm thinking about meeting times, I'm thinking about how do we start to schedule the supports? And it might be that we don't need to deal with that now, but I don't want to wait 2 weeks again. So I think yeah, I would put that in terms of meeting times, etc. Are there any thoughts on how we want to proceed with that? Yeah, and I guess at this point it feels like it's kind of a gathering considerations. Let's just do a sounding and see, where people are at with that and see if there's a clear sort of next step. So I'll pass it back over to Ronnie.
I actually had another agenda item idea that might tie in with this. I keep periodically thinking about us establishing a network with social roots so that we can
Yeah.
all have all the lifeboat builders be on there as a way to put scheduling polls, ask for feedback, people can communicate with each other. And I think this would be the perfect thing to
Mm.
plug into that network and also just to have it sooner so that we have it for the year for the cohort. So I'm curious
Cool.
what other people think about that. And I'm also curious, Ben, if you know how easy or not easy it would be to set up. I would be happy to set it up. I think I could,
Mhm.
if you plug me into the right person or whatever. Um, but yeah, that's my idea. Over to Roland.
What am I responding to?
The question I posed is, I am concerned about how we move forward on
Great.
scheduling agreement
Okay.
circles, etc.
Okay, great. Thank you. Because I wanted to comment on that. And then the social roots took my mind in a completely different direction. That's almost like walking through a doorway. Um, so in terms of the scheduling, I realized that I hadn't responded to with an RSVP. And I just went to look in my email to find the email for about it, and I can't find it, which I'm sure it's there. But that's just
Mm.
making me think of what you were saying last week or the week before somewhere about the BCCRN system where you send multiple emails and that they are spaced, because for people like me who, I know it's there, I can't find it, I don't know what to do. Oh, here's a fresh email that comes in. Now I can respond. So setting up something so that we can do sort of stepped reminder emails. So that's one thing. For the social roots, I think that I know Ben has been talking about doing exactly that, and getting in touch with social roots, and that if I'm remembering correctly, social roots is really excited, might be really excited at the possibility of using, the Lifeboat Academy as sort of a beta testing group. So and this is this is beyond my pay grade. I have no idea what it means. I have no idea what it's going to look like, and I am open and interested in seeing what could happen. So over to April.
I also am interested in the social roots network. As soon as my brain gets back in a state where it can actually absorb something in. I have to put a few things out before it can, it's kind of like a bad bank deposit account thing. So, I do have a question about the meeting times thing. Was it dates that we were looking for, or is there something else about who we're sending the emails out to and so on? And I do applaud the idea of reminders, as always. Thank you.
Yeah, the meeting schedule involves for each of the guilds, for the people who are interested in attending the meetings, are they happening at a good convenient time for people who are interested? So there's a guild specific question for each guild and the people who are interested, what are the right times? But then there's also for the other things like ongoing mentoring sessions or navigation sessions, those need to get scheduled in addition to the guild meetings. I like the idea of social roots. I kind of had it, I put it on the outreach agenda for the next guild meeting, the social roots thing, to talk it through. It is really easy to set up. And I think Ronnie, actually tomorrow, why don't you and I look at social roots as well? And because that might be a big answer to our questions. At the very least. And that makes me feel good enough for now, good enough to, that gives us a next step to take in that direction. So I can send out another reminder tomorrow morning for RSVPs for onboarding. That'll be easy. And then Ronnie, you and I can talk about implementing the social roots. They are excited. They're looking for and again, part of my hesitation has Social Roots is actually one of the partners that I'm inviting to the research project. And so there's an easy way of setting it up, and then there are more sophisticated things that we can do with it. And so I think it's a question of kind of establishing the baseline and the basic operations, and then going from there. So cool. I feel satisfied with those two action items, and just go once more through. Are we good with this? Any last thoughts before closing up the circle? Over to you, Ronnie.
I'm good. Over to Roland.
Excellent. Over to April.
I'm good. It is good to talk about some of these things. Some of them have felt like they're dangling, so I'm happy to have a landing place for them. Thank you. Over to Ben.
Cool. Well, I think then we have accomplished our mission, and so it's last thoughts for the good of the cause, a chance to close out the circle. Over to you, Ronnie.
So at the beginning of this meeting, when April's AI note taker was in the room, and then it left, it auto-generated a summary of the meeting that I got via email, and it's very short, and I want to read it because it made me laugh. Okay, so it says, the conversation involves participants discussing an issue with a note taker causing trouble. Ben Cottle and others joke about removing the note taker, comparing it to being a stowaway on a train. There's also a concern about how removing someone from Zoom might be perceived as a problematic action. Ben Cottle suggests putting the note taker in the waiting room as a solution.
So while I was trying to turn it off, it was using its ears and writing everything down before it got ditched, right?
About itself.
About itself.
Really ridiculous and funny to me. Anyway,
Oh.
that's my last thoughts. Good meeting. Over to Roland.
It's chicken time. Over to April.
I'm not sure if it's chicken time for me or not, but it's time for me to finish up for sure. Anyway, thank you.
It is. I had the little singing ladies telling me that it was official sunset,
Oh,
and that's chicken time. it's chicken time for everyone.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's as impressive as AI spying on us. Over to Ben.
Well, speaking of AI, I am auditioning an AI inbox bot, and also planning on auditioning an AI task manager. And so far, my experience with the inbox has been less than exciting. I thought it would just, kind of read my mind and make it all, but no, it wants me to conform to its plan. And if only I will bend myself to its will, I'm sure it will be fine. So anyhow, the experiments with AI continue. What?
I have one last thought that I forgot that I wanted to present. I was wondering about to get people more comfortable with the idea of doing a land acknowledgement at the beginning. Um, would it be possible to have sort of like a sort of what the I I guess I think I love checklists too much, but kind of basics of what should be in a land acknowledgement as a kind of like training wheels to help people build their own land acknowledgement around it. So so I'm proposing that as maybe something to add to the agenda for the coordination circle at the next meeting, or that the discussion would be which guild would take that on, or something like that. The end.
That would actually be a really cool separate discussion as part of our reconciliation work. Kind of, let's dissect it, let's break it down and talk about our intentions and all of the things you named, Roland.
Yeah, I concur. Cool. Well, we've got it on. We're not going to go into it now, but I think that there's lots of, and in terms of a home, it actually makes sense to me that this is a heart work.
Yeah,
This is heart work.
yeah.
So it's very cool. And I was jokingly thinking about the checklist is colonization bad, integration good, don't cause harm, heal harm, something like that. All right. Well, thank you all for, especially at the end of challenging days and with limited energy. Thanks all for being here and contributing. And I will see some of you tomorrow and some of you on the day or so after that, and some of you in about half an hour. So, bye. Take care.